Hi, this is Andrew, and this is Keen On, the daily now.tv chat show with some of the world's leading thinkers and writers. Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, August the 16th, 2023. It's midday here in San Francisco on the west coast of the United States. Somewhere, however, around the world, it's bedtime. Or perhaps you're about to wake up. I hope you all slept well. We've had a number of shows on sleep over the years. One with Lisa Lewis, who connects what she believes is the global crisis of teenage anxiety with sleep deprivation. She has a new book, The Sleep Deprived Teen, for parents. So we know that many of our teens are indeed sleep deprived. It's something that worries us. And the issue of sleep is often thought of in terms of not getting enough. We had another doctor on the show last November, Eric Prather, who's a San Francisco-based doctor, a sleep doctor. Eric has a new book out, The Sleep Prescription, 7 days to unlocking your best rest. Both Lewis and Prather, of course, are focused on the problem of not getting enough sleep, why we're not sleeping. I guess conditions associated one way or the other with insomnia. But there's another condition, which in many ways is even more chilling than not getting enough sleep. It's getting too much sleep. And this is dealt with, I didn't know much about it, but this is dealt with a fascinating new book by my guest today, Quinn Eastman, The Woman Who Couldn't Wake Up: Hypersomnia and the Science of Sleepiness. Quinn is joining us from Decatur, Georgia, where he works at the Emory School of Medicine. Quinn, I have to admit, I'd never heard of this condition until I came across your book. Describe what it is before we get to the woman who couldn't wake up.
The best description for idiopathic hypersomnia is someone who experiences a vastly increased need for sleep, and they find that sleep is taking over their lives.
Yeah, I mean, to put it mildly, this thing you call idiopathic hypersomnia means that you sleep all the time. I always assumed if you sleep too long, you would just die.
Well, there in kind of general epidemiology, there is this what they call a U-shaped curve. So people who sleep a lot tend to have a higher mortality, but that's all the people out there with heart disease and metabolic conditions and whatnot. And idiopathic hypersomnia is a lot rarer.
So the story, the person in your book is someone called Anna. The woman who couldn't wake up is Anna. And sleep, you say, was taking over her life. How did you come across Anna?
It was a story that had been floating around when I started working at Emory School of Medicine as a science writer. And you know, I kind of worked my way into covering it, and it had to do with research out of the Department of Neurology there. And what happened is she had come to the sleep center, and she was diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia based on that she had this vastly increased need to sleep, would sleep 10, 12 hours, was always thinking about it. And then her doctors gave her the medications that were available at that time, which was basically conventional stimulants, amphetamine or things like it. And these were spectacularly unsuccessful. You know, they got her through the day, but then she needed higher doses, and then she experienced crashes, and that was not working. So they kind of said, well, let's not do this anymore. And they tried another less conventional medication, which worked for her. And that sparked this theory about why the medication was working that is still kind of controversial. But it led to a couple things. One was it led to eventually research showing that that her cerebrospinal fluid contained a substance that seemed to be working like a sleeping pill, like a benzodiazepine. And that kind of that idea is still a little bit incomplete, but it led to a scientific paper. This substance was detected in samples from other folks, and it led to eventually to more attention for people with idiopathic hypersomnia, and the first industry-supported clinical trials for people with idiopathic hypersomnia. And then what I was hoping the book would do would to shine more light on this diagnosis, which has been sort of hidden behind narcolepsy, a better known condition, for a long time.
Yeah, I want to get to the difference between this idiopathic hypersomnia and narcolepsy in a minute, but tell me a little bit more about Anna. She was a lawyer, or she is a lawyer. I mean, obviously you don't want to give her last name, based in Atlanta. And you said she slept sometimes 12, 13 hours, but you suggest also longer, 30 or even 50 hours at a stretch. Could she literally sleep for 50 hours?
That was basically as a result of taking stimulants and then having a crash. And it wouldn't happen all the time. Unmedicated, I don't think that anything extreme like that would happen on a regular.
That must be a world record, Quinn, to sleep 50 hours. I mean, that's 2 full days, obviously.
There's in the literature from 19th century, there are all these records of people who sleep for an entire week or something. It sounds kind of impossible.
But they probably worked in the fields for a week and then slept for a week.
Yeah.
And this woman Anna was able to function, I mean, relatively normally in the workforce. She was a lawyer in Atlanta.
It built up over time, such that she noticed that her need for sleep was increasing. She got through law school. She clerked for a judge. She went to work at this law firm, and it was kind of building up all during that time. But eventually she had to take leave from her job, and because she didn't want to neglect her clients or not.
So how did you? I mean, I know you have a PhD, but you're not a GP. How did you access her, and were you covering her as a journalist or as a scientist?
More as a journalist, in the sense that I was following the research being done at Emory, and then I was able to interview Anna and establish a more long-term relationship with her, just professional, and I'm grateful that she was willing to give me permission to kind of use her story in this way.
Quinn, we live in an age, obviously, of extremes in the environment, and too hot temperatures, too cold temperatures. Do you think there's a connection between people who don't sleep enough and hypersomnia, people who sleep too much? Are these conditions that might somehow reflect the modernity of the early 21st century, or is that over-conceptualizing it?
There are a couple ideas around that. One is that people who are sleep deprived chronically for many years then have a reaction against that, and then they're sleepy all the time later. And that's an idea that goes back decades. But the other thing that is happening, and is periodically we get these big epidemics of viral infections, and that can lead to disturbance of regulation of sleep.
Well, Quinn, I want to take a break now. I want to give a message to our sponsor, Liberties, wonderful new quarterly, a quarterly journal of culture and politics. Guarantee you one thing about Liberties: it won't put you to sleep, given our subject today. I'm going to run a short ad for Liberties, and then we'll be back with Quinn Eastman, the author of The Woman Who Couldn't Wake Up. So don't go away, anyone. Don't fall asleep. We'll be back in about 20 seconds.
Beyond the news, the noise, there is nuance, insight. Liberties is not just a journal of ideas. It's a meteor of intelligent substance. It's the place to be for engaged citizens. Politics, opinion, substance. Liberties is a triumph for freedom of thought. A quarterly of urgency, of cultural exploration, of intellectual delight, of immaculate prose. It's invaluable. Subscribe now or find Liberties at your favorite bookseller.
We are back with Quinn Eastman, the author of The Woman Who Couldn't Wake Up. I know, Quinn, you've thought about the broader context of this in terms of contested illnesses. Doctors tend to be, like many scientists, very territorial. Is idiopathic hypersomnia, is it accepted broadly within the medical community as a condition?
Yes. So what I say in the book is that idiopathic hypersomnia never became a contested illness in the way that chronic Lyme disease or ME/CFS, chronic fatigue. It never got to that point, but it was acknowledged within sleep medicine, but the people with it felt kind of neglected and overlooked, and the diagnosis didn't get a lot of respect for a long time. And my book is partly a look at how that changed.
Is it? I mean, could you argue that it's just a category of narcolepsy? And why does it matter whether or not these conditions have their own terms? Why can't idiopathic hypersomnia be just considered an extreme form of narcolepsy?
That's one of the debates going on in the sleep medicine field right now. And 20 years ago, it wouldn't have mattered that much. But if it helps a physician decide what is the best medication, and guide a patient to that choice, then diagnosis matters. The terms and the categories that we put people in, then they matter.
We've done many shows, Quinn, as you can imagine, on the dysfunctionality, or what many people see as the dysfunctionality of the American medical system, particularly associated with insurance. Did Anna struggle on the insurance front? Presumably she needed to pay for the medicine and the doctors. Does having a condition which is accepted broadly within the medical community, does that mean insurance companies will pay for the drugs and the attention as opposed to stuff that isn't broadly accepted?
Well, what Anna and later other people did is that they were what Anna depended on was a medication called flumazenil, which is FDA approved, but not for sleep disorders. So she first obtained access to it through what's called expanded access. So basically making a special plea to the FDA and to the company, to the manufacturer, and then through a compounding pharmacy. and those are kind of gray areas in terms of pharmaceutical regulation. And now there are hundreds and possibly thousands of people who have who get access to flumazenil, and insurance doesn't cover it. It's not super expensive compared to some of the actually the approved options, but the people, it's possible to get insurance coverage, but it's very difficult. You have to, go through a couple rounds of appeal, apparently. That's a really, but I think anyone with a chronic illness these days in the US healthcare system has to deal with something called prior authorization. And it's just a headache over and over again.
Yeah.
And people with sleep disorders are just part of that. And then also these days, we have the shortage of more conventional stimulants.
I know you've written also about the prevalence of this condition in some white papers. How many people have this? What's your guess?
The current guess right now for idiopathic hypersomnia is 1 in 10,000.
Which is, to me, is not a lot. I mean, that's not a lot, meaning it's actually quite a large. So most of us know 10,000 people. Most of us probably know somebody with this condition.
There are a lot of people out there who experience what is called excessive daytime sleepiness. But most of those people have something much more common, which is sleep apnea. So idiopathic hypersomnia is sort of the people who pass through the sieve and make it to the bottom.
So finally, Quinn, what would you suggest to people who are listening or watching and think, oh my God, I might have this condition, or my son or daughter might have this condition? What should they do?
Well, there's a lot of research going on, and there are organizations that have formed over the last 10 years to support people with these kind of diagnoses. And the Hypersomnia Foundation is one, and I spoke earlier this year at their conference, and it's so the thing that I recommend is to get together with others with the same diagnosis, compare notes. There are people, there are physicians who know how to address your concerns, or at least step by step. And there are other people who deal with the same issues, and it's definitely helpful to compare notes and get together and organize.
I mean, sleep's so essential, isn't it? I mean, either you get not enough or too much. I never realized there were sleep doctors. Eric Prather, for example. Should there be more? Is this one of the problems, that there aren't enough doctors who specialize in sleep, or perhaps might it reflect too much specialization?
I don't know what the numbers are. It's gone through waves of a lot of people piling into sleep medicine because they think it's an easy specialty to get into, but then it goes away. What there needs to be is a way for people to check their sleep quality at home that is better than some of the devices that are available. And that is something that I think that there should be available pretty soon. Something like a patch that you wear on your chest, monitors your breathing and your heart rate, and could actually tell you, like, you can get something on your phone that will
the apps now. I mean, most of these apps, especially on the iPhone, allow you to measure your own sleep. I'm always a little wary of those. But should people who are concerned, should they use these apps, do you think?
The ones that are just track, your based on your phone, or the sleep scientists will tell you that those just aren't good enough. But there are some better technologies there that kind of could even measure your brain waves a little bit, that can do a really good job.
And then finally, Quinn, what are the numbers? I mean, if you're sleeping, more than 9 or 10 hours a day, should you be concerned?
Yeah, that is, even if you don't meet the formal criteria for idiopathic hypersomnia, which is actually 11 hours, then there are lots of people who have a problem, and then they can go to a doctor and have it addressed.